Welcome. We got a new guest today, 7 October, San Diego zone. Welcome. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We appreciate you coming. You've worked a lot this year. You've done so much. It's crazy. I was trying to keep up with everything you were doing. You've 2 albums. What is it? 7 singles.
Yeah.
You have 2 different shows, right? Nightmare Cinema. You have your blog, your podcast.
Yeah.
You even were putting on events in the beginning of the year. Nightmare at Fantasy. It's crazy year that you've had.
It has been.
How do you feel? Now that we're wrapping up. I noticed that you posted some goals, at the beginning of or at the end of last year.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Now that we're at the end of this year, how do you feel about your accomplishments and everything you've done?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Like, you caught on to that. Yeah, I did that because I was like, I want to do like a retrospective, like at the end of the year. So I kind of wanted to put my goals so everybody can see them, and then kind of because it's kind of for inspirational thing too. It's like so people can see like somebody like me that is like everyone else can do it. So I put my goals, and one of the hugest things for me was like 2020 is gonna be like a musical year for me. Like a lot of people don't know that if you've been watching some of the interviews from the past couple of weeks. I started off technically as an artist, poet first. So music has always been the first thing. Then the blogger, journalist, whatever you want to call me, came second. So a lot of people started knowing me as a journalist. So they think, oh, that's where I started. But technically it's the music first and then, the journalistic approach. So, I've done a lot, like you mentioned. So I did reach my goal of like making music, and I dropped 2 EPs, which I didn't really have that intended. I was just going to do just one. But then the second one just kind of, I was like so inspired, and everything that was going on too. A lot of, crazy stuff with like Black Lives Matter and all that stuff influenced me to like, I need to drop this like now, to kind of give people like a uplifting message, that we can still get through this difficult time. So that came about. So I did that. And then, like you said, I did Nightmare Cinema with Platform Collection. So shout out to the Platform Collection team. They allowed us to have our own shows to kind of showcase our own talent and what we love about either the culture or whatever it may be. So in my case, for those that know me, I'm hip hop and horror fan. So I was like, Nightmare Cinema would be cool to have it on Platform because nobody was really doing something like that, like merging hip hop and horror. So having like hip hop guests and talking about my favorite horror movies, and some of the guests even like I had 60 East, shout out to 60 East. I had him. We did like The Lost Boys because he loves that movie. Noah James, like other people, Small Zuno. So I did that, and then, like you said, my Nightmare on Sedgwick Avenue podcast and blog. I just wanted to keep showing love to the city of San Diego. That's where I'm from, but I also have other people that are not technically from there, like New York artists, people from LA, different parts, of the world, and even the horror community. That's where I wanted to really tap in this year. I think that might have been one of the goals too, to like tap in with the horror community. So I think I did a great job on that part too. With Nightmare on Sedgwick Avenue, I got to interview a lot of cool people like Luis Iga Garza, who directed Murder in the Woods, which was the first like slasher all Latino cast with like Danny Trejo and other people. He's like independent filmmaker, so I thought that was cool to have him on there, being Mexican himself. And then I just interviewed Edwin Pagan, who is the founder of Latin Horror, who also showcases like Latinos in horror and stuff like that. So I got to interview him and other cool people like one of the founders of like Horrorgasm and SD, that is like a horror-based platform. So it was cool. So it's been a journey. And I feel like I'm happy of where I'm ending right now in 2020. I feel like I accomplished all the goals and even stuff that I didn't even think I was gonna accomplish. So thank you for pointing that out.
Are you planning to head into more of like a horror film direction? Like, how do you plan to fuse both of them in your art? Like, do you plan to do a movie, horror film eventually with your music, or are those ever gonna blend?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So that I was actually, you'll be probably the first ones to get like the 411 or like the sneak peek.
Scoop.
But so I have been I've already kind of pitched it to Kelsey up in Platform Collection. So I told them that my next thing, because like I feel like I've become like the queen of like multitasking. So I feel like I've mastered the art, at least of like blogging and journalist. So now I kind of want to move on to still doing music, of course. So still perfecting that craft because I still feel like I can get better. But also I kind of want to move into filmmaking. So that's like a huge thing for me. So I am working on something. I already have like something written down and stuff like that. I'm still working like on getting like a like screenwriting it and everything. But it's gonna be most likely the name's gonna be called Las Leyendas de Mi Abuela, because I grew up like being told like a lot of like leyendas from my grandma when we were like little, me and my sisters. I think that's where like my love of horror also came from, because like, we used to watch like horror movies, me and my grandma, like Mexican films. And she would also tell us like stuff from her pueblo and stuff like that, like El Chamuco, you know, all these different like stories. And I was always intrigued by it. And she was like a really good storyteller. Sometimes I wish I had like recorded her, but some of it still like stayed in my mind, and some of it is from, you know, I go to Mexico and they tell like leyendas there too. So it's probably gonna be like an anthology show. That's what like at least what I'm envisioning, and kind of like Tales from the Crypt, like where they have like some sort of like moral to the story, but it's like Mexican lore. And if I can, maybe other lores, but I want to do it for like la raza, you know, la cultura. So that's gonna be like my next goal for next year for sure. So we'll see.
Is that your ultimate goal, to go just into like more like a film show horror kind of thing?
Yeah, I think I still want to do the music. Like music is probably always going to be a part of me. I'll still probably put out projects. That's another thing. I still want to do another EP if possible. So for sure, like again, another sneak peek. But I'm thinking that the next one's going to be called La Poeta, and it's going to be. I mentioned it a few times in some of the other interviews, but it's going to be a love EP. So it'll be like a different departure from, because every album, if whoever's been like following me along, every album I wanted to be different, like to see the different sides of me, because I'm a Gemini, so I have like multiple personalities or whatever. So I have like God of My Destiny was like more my poetic side. From Xibalba to Aztlan, it was my rapper, like cultura side. And then now I kind of want to show like my sensitive side, because a lot of people think that like horror fans are like super hardcore, like violent or something. But we also obviously have our soft side. So I'm like a huge like, fun fact, like romantic comedies are like my, you know, my go-to thing too. So I want to do that for the next album. It's going to be more like a love, like romantic EP, still keeping the spoken word part though. So yeah.
How are you, like, what type of community you're finding, like with the mix of both, like the horror and the hip hop? Is there like a strong community there where there's like people who like or really love both? Or at least maybe you're introducing them to both? I think
it's more like that, because you mentioned Nightmare at Fantasy. Shout out to Fantasy Lounge. So for them, Brandon, the DJ, he actually runs that. He had reached out to me, and we threw the event in March, early March, right before like the COVID hit, and we had to like close all the venues down. So I got lucky. So when I had that show, it was pretty cool to see, because it was like kind of like every different people from like walks of life, like that you would never have seen like at a hip hop show, which I thought it was interesting, because I saw some like punkish white kids at like a hip hop show, but they were probably horror fans, because I saw some of them wearing like horror patches and shit like that. So I thought that was cool, and I didn't even know who they were, but they somehow found out about it. So I was like, that's pretty dope to see like two different people that would have never gathered together in one room. So for sure, that's like my next goal too. I want to throw shows, but who knows what's going to happen with everything going on with the pandemic. I would love to throw more of those where I merge those two cultures to see if they can, you know, get people together that you would never have, you know, they would have never gathered together like that. So for sure that, and yeah, like San Diego does have like a hip hop scene, but also like the horror scene. Like I said, Horrorgasm is a big platform over there. Shout out to them. They've done like, I think this year they had to do a virtual event, but they do showcase like mostly like horror artists. So people that actually like do arts, like sculptors, people that paint and all that stuff. So it's cool if I would really definitely love to work with them as well, to try to kind of merge both cultures and like, you know, maybe start something new, like a hip hop and horror that's never been done before.
No, yeah, it was a cool concept when I saw it. The Nightmare at Fantasy is so 7 producers and 7 rappers, and then they flip a horror beat, right? Like on the spot. Like, did you pick up kind of thing?
So what we did is me and Brandon was like, how are we gonna do it? So what we did is we did like kind of like a little, where you pick from like a little cup. So we like invited a few of the rappers. We just put like the name of the producers in like a cup, and I'm like, okay, you guys are gonna pick your producers this way. That way they didn't think it was like favoritism or anything like that. So the rappers got to pick who they were gonna collab with. So yeah, so we paired them up, and then we told them, okay, now, and then we also put the themes. So it was like Nightmare on Elm Street. What was the other ones? Like, I think it might have been Friday the 13th, Halloween. I can't remember all of them, but they were all in a cup too, and that's how they selected the song that they were going to get. So then they were like, okay, this is your song, this is your producer. Now you guys have like till, I think it was like literally like a month. So it was pretty quick. So some of them organized, some of them I knew that were gonna be like prepared and like have written raps and stuff like that. We didn't have any rules or anything, so we were like, okay, you can do whatever. So some freestyled at the show, like Fade Green, shout out to him, he's like really dope. He freestyled. Yazi and Legion like had a whole performance and stuff like that, so shout out to them as well. So yeah, it was pretty cool to see that done, like last minute type of thing. Yeah.
Are you looking into putting on any events this year or 2021?
I want to. I don't know. I told Brandon, who again he runs the Fantasy Lounge, to see if he wanted to collaborate. Well, I haven't really talked to him recently, so for sure I would love to do something again with him, because he has like his connections and then I have my connections too. So gathering together and throwing like another show would be cool. Yeah.
How do you balance it all? Like how do you, because you have all these different passions and especially like horror. How do you balance doing all these different tasks instead of just focusing on on an art or something?
Yeah.
Like what motivates you to do other things?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's all about being organized, because I feel like last year I did kind of neglect the horror side of it. Like I feel like I was trying to get more involved in the scene, in the San Diego hip hop scene. So I kind of did neglect it. So that's why 2020 my goal was like I want to do like even for both, So this one I think I organized myself well, and then I kind of set goals for myself. Like okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm going to kind of, for Nightmare on Sedgwick Avenue, I want to do half rappers or whatever in the hip hop scene and then half like horror community. And I think I did a great job of like balancing both. So for sure next year, I still want to continue that, because it is a difficult thing to do, because they're two different like arenas, like different people, all that stuff. So yeah.
And so what about when it comes to music? What about you started with poetry or you started with music first?
So it's technically poetry, because I started writing first. So I started like when I was 13. I started writing like in poetry form, and then I still have like my first like composition book and stuff like that. Then it kind of like molded over to, or evolved to like music. So it was like lyrics and stuff like that. And then that was like around when I was like 13, 14. So it was like early 2000s. So then it was like still like the tape era a little bit. So I would like, I don't know if you guys remember like the tape recorders for those like the young people, but the tape recorders, I would like record myself. I still need to find them, because I think I have them at home, but I would record myself like in the bathroom, like where nobody would listen to me, and like kind of like low key like rap or sing. And then I was just like that, like it was just for like not a hobby, but it was like a passion of mine for me to like kind of like let my emotions, because I'm not like an emotional type of kid. Because as like a little kid I got bullied, so I think that kind of played a little bit into it. But pretty much I did that, and then going into like high school I would still write poems and stuff and lyrics. And if you guys went to high school, like in my days, it was like in the like early 2000s, like 2006 or whatever. My friends used to have those clear binders and shit like that, so you would put your pictures and stuff like that, and then my friends had like crushes on guys and stuff like that, so they knew I wrote poetry, and they were like, oh, write me a poem, like how I feel about this guy, blah blah. So it was kind of cool, like they would put like my poems in like front of their binder. So that's how I started, and then I just kept writing all through college. And then I bumped into like an old childhood friend, and he got me into SoundCloud. So from there, then I kind of did start like the whole rapping thing. So it was like, I want to say like 2014 or so. I started recording myself with my own computer and stuff like that. I didn't even have an audio interface. I just had like this shitty ass mic. So if you go to my SoundCloud, you can probably still hear some of those songs. I still have them up there. And yeah, so it went from there. And then I kind of took like a little break in between. 2017, I left like my career job. I was working in criminal justice for like 5 years. So I quit in 2017. And then that's when I kind of immersed myself into like the San Diego hip hop scene. So, because I met somebody that was involved in the scene, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know there was anything like that. So, started going to shows and stuff like that. And then I was still making music, but it wasn't like something where I was like, that's gonna be like my career. And then somewhere or other, I would like write about like music and like hip hop and horror movies. So I was like, I'm gonna do probably like a blog. I just want to do a blog because I had somebody that I knew that had a blog, and I was like, why don't I just move everything that I do on IG to an actual platform? And that's when the whole Nightmare on Sedgwick Avenue started in 7octoberz.com, which now I just changed it to nightmareonsedgwick.com, because 7octoberz is going to be kind of like now my artist page. So yeah, I became the blog, and that's how I did the whole like journalist site. But pretty much, yeah, my music started from poetry, kind of to answer your question, from poetry now to like rap. And I kind of want to do world music. So I kind of want to do everything. I'm a huge fan of music in general. I love hip hop. That's like my number one. But I love like R&B, like even Latin trap, reggaeton and stuff like that. So that's like my next thing. Like I just want people to know that like it's not like, oh, she did rap and now she's gonna do all this stuff. Like I'm putting it out to the world there. Like I've always wanted to do world music. So if you hear me like doing something different, it was not something that just came from the nowhere. Because I grew up listening to everything since I was a kid. So from like mariachi banda to like reggaeton, even like pop, rock, all that stuff. Like I dig everything. So yeah, that's like hopefully where my music should hopefully evolve to.
So you're using all these different mediums just as different ways to express yourself, right? You're not limiting yourself. So like what inspired the change from poetry to rap? Was it just like as another way to express yourself, or?
Probably like the music I was listening to, because like I said, my parents would listen to a little bit of everything because they speak English and Spanish. So it was kind of cool because they were also listening to like 80s music, like Madonna and stuff like that, and like Michael Jackson. And then one of family members introduced me to gangster rap, like Tupac and Biggie. And that's, I think, when I kind of like, oh, I want to do that. So that's when the poetry kind of evolved to like rap from there.
What was one of the first songs that you dropped that you feel, I guess, had like inspired you to continue like moving in that path, for music?
Yeah.
Is there something that kind of stands out to you?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think. For sure it was before the EPs. I want to say, I think it was probably when my grandma passed away. In 2014, I wrote a song for her. It's actually, I think I might have took it down though, but it was on SoundCloud. It was called Dark Nirvana. And it talks about her like passing away, like how it impacted me. And like, it was also when I call it like my breakdown or whatever, because I was still at the criminal justice job. It was until 2015, I think, when I dropped this. So I was always also talking about that, like how it was draining and my creativity was kind of like no longer there that much, because I noticed I wasn't writing as much. I was kind of low key, I think, like depressed being at that job. It was kind of slowly like eating me alive type of thing. And then I also have a lot of anxiety, which I still battle with today. So all that is in that song, and I feel like that song was like one of the songs that was like I need to keep going. Like I think I have like a gift. So I was like, yeah, just keep going.
That's cool and brave. Not a lot of people are willing to just give up their careers to pursue their passions.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's really cool of you to do that. So the two projects that you dropped this year, what did their titles come from that whole transition? From you like leaving your career into just finally fully realizing your dreams into music, and like break down the titles and how they identify you?
Yeah, so for sure, God of My Destiny was. So I have it right here, God of My Destiny. But that one for sure was like the journey of like finding myself, because like right after I quit that job, I literally felt like the world was lifted off my shoulders type of thing. Because I think it was just like taking a lot of my energy. It was like a lot of negativity there, like not just like the people that I interacted with, but even like the job there itself, like the work environment, it was not healthy. So as soon as I left that, I felt like a million times better. So it was kind of like a journey of like self-worth, self-discovery and all that stuff, self-love. So God of My Destiny, that's what it means to me, is like I became the God of my destiny. And because I quit the job. If you've seen like my past interviews lately, I talk about that. So I quit. I didn't have no backup job. A lot of people like have something, waiting for them before they quit. I didn't. I just like decided I'm done with this shit. Like I'm gonna quit. So I quit, and luckily I had like savings in my family. So they backed me up and they were like, just do what you got to do. And I was like, okay. So I quit, and that's kind of like a big step, because not a lot of people have like the courage to do that shit. So God of My Destiny is what it means. Like I took like a hold of my own destiny, and I kind of like became like the God of it. So that's where it came from. And then the cover, for those who are like movie fans, it's for Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen. So he's like, for me, he's considered like, he's like a kind of like a superhero, anti-hero at the same time. But he's kind of like a god, because he has like all these like different powers that are like godly like. So that's why I decided to like be my version of Dr. Manhattan. Somebody said like Doctora Manhattan or something like that. So that's where I got that. So that's where that meaning comes from. So from like pretty much from a negative spot to a positive. And then from Xibalba to Aztlan, the latest project, it's a similar thing, because I want to always do that. Like I went from a negative to a positive, kind of like Biggie says that, So from Xibalba, so Xibalba, it's like a mythical hell or underworld in Mayan lore, and then Aztlan is Aztec lore. Two things is like considered like a paradise, or also I think where like part of Mexico used to be, like California and all that stuff like that. So again, going from like a mythical hell to like a mythical paradise. So again, it's kind of like a play with words and stuff like that. So that's where those titles come from.
Born with mixed blood to a world I can't trust. Enslaved and betrayed, my people slayed and maimed. Full of history and pain. Mestizo in pure blood in my DNA. Ancestors run through my veins. PTSD got me going insane. Conquistadores came from Spain. Try to conquer us.